Welcome to Caught in the Crossfire, where we debate the hot topics in Counter-Strike, give you our hot takes, and see who's going to emerge unscathed from the crossfire. I'm Darth Mike, and we got a special guest on this week. We got Mr. Mauisnake himself, Alex Ellenberg, fresh off the Pro League desk and into the crossfire. Maui, how you feeling?
Pretty good, Darth. We go way back though. I hope people know that. The first LAN I casted was with you. You were there. That was Tokyo and Tulsa back in 2018. Good times. How we both have grown since then, though.
How we both have grown indeed. You also did, I think, my first podcast ever back in, what was it, the Drop Room? Way back when, before either of us had figured out anything.
Right.
We also got Alan here. Alan's here. Hey, Alan, you're in your white void.
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I've actually come up with a new favorite game on Twitter, Mike, which is whenever somebody tweets something at me that's just outrageous or obviously false, I quote tweet it and say, "Whose burner is this?" And then I put Mauisnake ?
You've been tagging me constantly, I've noticed. Yeah.
The plan is, if I do it enough times, I create this narrative that you do actually have all of these burner accounts, and you just roam the Twitters spewing rubbish.
You're just gaslighting the audience every day. Yeah. Okay. Eventually it'll stick. People, there's a lot of that goes around. Mauisnake, not even from Maui. I think Davey started that one. You know, there can be more. There can be more.
You settle it for the people once and for all. Are you from Maui?
Yeah. No.
There you go.
I know. I've lived in Hawaii for quite some time, almost a decade, but not actually on Oahu, not Maui.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wrong island. But let's dive into the topics here. We've got 4 outlined for you. We're just going to be diving into it. The name of the game here is debate. Have some fun with it. Get ridiculous. Call Alan an absolute fool. Do whatever you want. Call me an absolute fool as well, although it's really Alan who's going to be your opponent in most of these. But let's get into our first one. This comes from a tweet from you, Maui. The tweet is, I'm banking on @CSGO replacing Overpass and Vertigo with Anubis and Tuscan after the major, and we'll start the 2 maps every 2 majors cycle, i.e. annual +2, -2. So the question here is, how should Valve handle map distribution? How frequently should maps come in and out? And what are the maps that should come out of the pool next? It's your tweet. You've probably made your point, but if you want to elaborate at all, go for it.
I'll just say that with this tweet, it's not necessarily that I would put money on Valve doing this. It's more just that I would want them to do it, so I'm speaking it into existence. I want there to be a 2-map rotation. I want at the end, after every 2 majors per year in the winter break, they say, let's just change 2 maps now, because that would be cool. And then I don't know if I really specified it in that tweet, but I kind of would imagine a legacy pool of maps that would be part of this rotation constantly, and you would know that they would stay there. So I would include in that Dust 2, Mirage, Train, Inferno, and Nuke. I think those would be my 5. And then maps more like on the fringe, like Overpass, Vertigo, Ancient, those would kind of be on the outside, and those would be rotated. Like, those could be, if they're out after 1 or a couple years, they could be out forever. But the main 5 legacy ones that I'm talking about, those would be assured that they're coming back within a year.
Okay. Alan, what do you make of it?
So I've kind of thought about this a lot myself in the past, that what I'd really like is something like a 9-map pool where we rotate 2 of them out every major. And I think it actually has to be at the major where you rotate them, and you need to know in advance, crucially, because first of all, the teams need to kind of know what's going to happen. It is pretty helpful, and you have to change it, I think, after a major, because otherwise you're going to have weird scenarios where some teams will just stop practicing the maps that won't be in the pool anymore, and you get really bizarre stuff. Versus if you do it at a major, then the incentive, at least for the teams that are going to be in the playoffs, is just so enormous that it's not a big deal. So that's how I would do it. And in terms of what those 2 maps would be, I'm not sure. Tuscan looks okay to me. I'd certainly like to see it tried. Anubis, I'm not totally sold. I think actually Cobble used to be okay, and with a few changes, it could be doable. So that's what I want, Mike. 9 maps, and then every 6 months, let's change 2 of them, but at least tell the teams what's going to happen.
That's how I know you've never played New Cobble, because New Cobble sucks tremendously.
It's very bad.
It's so much worse than old Cobble. Really unfortunate there. I know some people were talking about Anubis and saying it actually felt relatively pro-ready. Was that your tweet, Maui, that I'm thinking of here?
I did tweet that. I mean, I guess this is like a show match, but I casted with NIP and Big playing Anubis against each other for Betway a while back, and they actually knew nades. They actually knew some nades, and like I think with that map you could definitely like there's skybox like the skybox is very open. There's a lot of areas you can like throw fakes from. You can throw stuff from pretty far across the map, I think, and that sort of stuff is really nice. Whereas the problem with Tuscan right now for me is that there's just too many long, tall stacked kind of building areas, I guess, that make it very hard from like the storage area, like the lower A main, B main areas, to actually throw nades from those effectively. And so Anubis just has a more professional ready skybox, but I do like Tuscan's layout a lot. Like I mean I played Source and I played CPL Mill a good amount, so I really do like that sort of layout.
Now, about the maps that you said coming out, you tabbed Vertigo and Overpass to be removed. Why Vertigo and Overpass?
Vertigo is one of my 2-3 favorite maps. I love it, but it's just that it's kind of one of those ones that Mirage is hard to touch because so many people like that map. It's the most played map in matchmaking, and we know that Valve looks at the numbers, and that's kind of where it's like, do I think Mirage probably in terms of timing needs it the most to get out? Yes, but I also think that Overpass has like a lower playability, or like I guess more casual people don't play it as much, and there are some complaints with it in the pro scene right now, and I don't think that it's bad, but I think that it could use an update, kind of like what they did to Inferno. And if they said they're going to bring back Overpass in a year, or the following winter break, 3 majors from now, I guess, then I think it could be very, very good, because I already think it's good, but it just needs a little bit of polish. Like maybe like shrink it just a little bit. Like I don't know what they would do exactly. I'm not a map maker. I'm not Pronogo, but there's things they could be done with it. Vertigo, I just want that out. Like I don't really love watching that map. I feel like it doesn't lead to the best narratives when we're describing what happened in a match that often. It's more often than not like it's not as one note as it was for the first year that it came out, but it's still one of the less engaging maps for me. I can still see storylines when I watch a Mirage game much better than I can see it in a Vertigo game. Even though I played Vertigo when I was playing Premier, like it's still, yeah.
Not a fan of watching it. Alan, how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go from more of a competitive angle of which one should come out. I think Dust 2 is terrible. I think it's always been shocking, and especially I know in the early years of CS:GO when the, let's say, strategically teams weren't as good. I think Dust 2 was quite a lot of fun. It made for a lot of good games, but I just don't think in the last few years it's been any good whatsoever. I just don't like how the map plays. There's not enough options, and even with the update, it took teams like 2 months to figure out, yeah, you can just drop down, play the right side, you can boost. Like, it doesn't actually make a great deal of difference in terms of enabling the map, and the main problem is you just can't rotate on the CT side without burning all your nades and making it super obvious. So I'd love to see Dust 2 go. I don't like it whatsoever, but as Maui's saying, we've got to be real here. In what world does Valve remove the most historic map? So I kind of always have the knowledge that unless they're going to pull it for another reskin, which isn't going to happen soon, Dust 2 isn't going to go. In terms of another map, it's tricky. Mirage has been around for a while, but I do fundamentally think it's an excellent map. And in big games, we kind of forget that we've seen a lot of Mirage. I remember like Katowice final, for example, had a great Mirage game. So I wouldn't take that. Vertigo's a tricky one, because I actually think the problem with Vertigo, not to throw them under the bus too much, is I don't think we observe it very well, to be honest, because a lot of Vertigo is actually played in mid and B, and we just look at A every single round, because I think there's the most travel and it's kind of the most visually engaging, but it doesn't actually tell the story very well. So Maui will know this. When you're on desk, you just feel like you've just watched a ramp 15 times. Then whoever's won the duel is the only narrative you have in the post-game segment. When, like, if you've got a B player that's getting a lot of picks, that wins the map. So I actually think Vertigo is a bit of an observer problem, and it's not helped by the verticality either, let's be honest. So yeah, I'm a bit torn, Mike. After Dust 2, I actually like all the other maps, I think.
I'll wade into the pool. I'm a chief of the Mirage hater club. I feel like Mirage has gotten so incredibly stale to watch. I think it does deliver in the big moments, but I think that normal Mirage games are like, okay, they've established mid control. Okay, they're going up catwalk. Okay, This is pretty rinse repeat. Oh, it didn't work. Time to go to A-ramp, smokes. Oh, A-ramp execution coming through. Is someone playing under balcony? Oh my goodness, someone's playing under balcony. I've seen it 3 million times. The map hasn't been touched in a long time. I think overpass out makes sense, even though I enjoy watching that map a lot, just because it is the map that hasn't had a visual refresh in the longest time. But I want to see Mirage as that second one out if we're taking 2. I want new blood. I want new blood in. And talking about legacy maps, if we're putting in Tuscan, there's your legacy. Swap that in. You know, you got your old hats, feeling all right about it. Get Mirage out of there.
I'll give one point for Mirage that I don't really hear this one too often, but it's why I love watching it. I would say post-plant situations on the map are some of the most engaging parts of it, whereas compare it to Inferno, like both iconic maps at this point, both have stayed in the space for so long, and people like they're usually people's 1 or 2. It's rare that someone has Inferno out of their and Mirage out of their top tier, unless they're like really being hipsters or something. But like with Inferno post plants, it's so favored for the guy defending, but like it's actually kind of weirdly hard, I'd say, to defend like an A retake on Mirage. And that's why I think the map has like a really good flow to it, where even though, yeah, we've seen the A execs, but getting on the site is just the first stage. And then we know there's still so much more to unpack with this round. Whereas if someone gets onto like Inferno B and they win because they just exec and got this like 2 for 2, a 3 for 3 retake on B Inferno is so hard for the CTs, whereas on Mirage I do not know who's going to win it, like a lot of the time. You know, there's so many reasons that like a Mirage retake can work, whereas I just like Inferno is so tough. Like people, I don't dislike Inferno, but I know there's a lot of Inferno haters out there because it's just like it's like one of the most saved maps, you know, you see the most saves on it.
Yeah, it involves a certain amount of tactical discipline that maybe they don't all. We'll move on here, though. I don't want to get into map lore for too long. We'll slide on into our next topic. If you've got strong opinions on maps, hop in the comments and let us know, or tweet at Alan_Hender. You can see it under his name. Give him all of your map takes.
I'll tweet it with my burner.
Tweet him with your 37 burners. But let's slide in. Let's get into the esports side of things. Let's talk about teams. We started to get some results. The beginning of this year is starting to shape up, or the beginning of this season, rather, off of the player break, right? We're getting a vision into teams. I have a question. It's about the big clan. I know, Maui, you're a big booster here, but my question is this version of Big Clan actually built to contend for titles, or are they just treading water? That's where I want to take it. What do you think, Maui?
That's a pretty, I guess, those are two pretty distant sides of this. I would say that right now, this big team should be just kind of competing to become a top 10 team. Like, that's what I would see the goal is. When you're working with purely German domestic talent, you don't have the biggest pool of players at your disposal. And we actually did see, even though it was online, we saw the heights they could reach when they went international, when they brought in a huge player like Xantaras to the team in terms of firepower that they could ascend. But with this roster, you look at the firepower on it, and it is worse. Like, essentially, Crimbo is still a rookie. A lot of people have very high expectations for this guy, but he hasn't played Tier 1 CS for more than 7 months yet. So this is really, like, I don't know where you can't really, it's hard to contend when you have a guy that's rough and new on the team, unless they're some transcendent player like a Zywoo or a m0NESY, or actually not even m0NESY yet, is really on a contending team. So you'd have to have like the best luck with rookies, and to do that in Germany is tough. If Big are holding on to a top 10 spot in the world, I would say that they're satisfying their objective.
I feel like it should be a little high, you know. I think they did have some pretty good results in kind of, let's say, May, June of this year. They looked really, I think they actually peaked at the RMRs, actually. I think they looked very, very good. They looked pretty decent for my money as well in Dallas. And then Roubert, albeit online, they did win the thing, even despite this is the period when their roster was having a few issues, let's say. So I think the expectation should be a little bit higher. Maybe top 5 is a little bit of a stretch, but I just feel like I think Sursen's in pretty good form. I think Tabson individually, in the context of being an in-game leader, is pretty good. And I look at those two pieces and think we can build a good team here. I think Crimbo, maybe it's not showing yet. I think he has kind of been a revelation in terms of a find as a player. in terms of especially what he brings outside of the server. Maybe he can up his game individually a tad, but I do think he adds a big angle for this team they haven't had for a long time. So I do truly believe Big's goal should realistically be borderline top 5, maybe 6th or 7th. And when I look at the team and how they're playing and why that isn't the case, I think Faven's a big reason for that, because I expected Faven to be maybe even the best player on this team alongside Surson. And I think he did start pretty well in the start of the year when he first came over. But I think he's plateaued quite a lot. And it's surprising because it feels to me like Faven is in all of his comfortable spots. The team is set up for him to succeed. So I'll throw it back to you, Maui. Where's Faven gone?
Oh, I'll first say that Favin had to swap off on a couple of his spots when he switched to this roster. He had to play a couple. I think he had to play like a couple anchor spots. I know they on Mirage because Sprout really didn't play that much Mirage, so they just kind of threw him into I think like a B. I think he was playing a B anchor, and he was playing like A before or A/connector for Sprout if I remember correctly, and so. It's not like they're giving him everything, but I will say that he has dropped off in the last couple months, but I know that he had COVID, and I know that he was kind of in and out of the team because he had that, and I don't know if that kind of threw him off his game or anything like that. I guess we've yet to. I guess at the Blast Fall groups, he did not look that strong in the games that I caught, or he didn't really make an imprint. In all honesty, like I don't really remember anything he did at the Blast Fall groups. But then with Surson, he's kind of just so up and down and that's why he gets that label of onliner, because online you almost can surely bet on him being the best player in the server, top 2 if there's another insane opera on the other team. But with Tabson's like the most consistent when it goes like online to LAN. In fact, he seems to elevate when he goes to LAN, which is why this team kind of has weird, like it doesn't feel like they're probably not winning in matches the way that they're winning in practice if I have to guess, because it always feels like Tabson has to bail them out. But I bet you in practice, it is probably people like Keto and Surson that are just carrying them or something like that. But then in the pressured moments, it's always like the more experienced guy that has to do it in Tabson.
Now, diving into it a little bit more as well, what's the failure point? If we're looking at this roster over the course of this season, right, and the run up to the major and the run up to the end of the year, what's the line of, okay, this season is a success or this season is a failure in terms of world ranking?
In terms of world ranking, I said top 10 at the beginning, but like if I'm being hyper specific, like if they're in the top 8 on HLTV, I think that's a win for them. That's really good. If they're like 9-10, they're probably like this season could have been better. And if they're out of the top 10, they probably don't think they achieved their objective, because when you look at a lot of the teams that are ahead of them right now in HLTV ranking, you probably say like 5 of those teams really surely should be better than them. But then it opens up a lot. It really, like beyond the FaZe, Navi, Vitality, I would actually add Liquid to that now, and you would hope G2 would power up too because of how much they're spending on all this. Those 5 should probably be, to me, very, very high. And then Big has a chance to now, I guess they have a chance to be 6th, but I would probably think like, there's just going to be some other team that comes out of the woodwork to just slot in there.
D9 probably, I think.
Oh no.
Okay, it looks like we've had a bit of a glitch there, but we've
just
made it
ignore
back.
It. We can edit this.
We can know it. We can fix this. They won't even notice. But anyway, the point I was making was that I think the biggest problem with Big for a long time has been mid-rounding and communication. Their set rounds are excellent. Their executes are maybe the best in the world. But I think something that maybe even can't be addressed or has never fully been addressed is this angle of mid-rounding, having vocal players on this team. And it scares me a lot that they've taken out an experienced player like Tizian. And I guess the implication is that Tizian never grew into being a very vocal player or adding a lot of value to the team in this sense, at least not enough to keep him on the lineup. And I do think Crimbo can, in time, grow into that sort of player. He definitely is vocal, but he needs to learn a lot about top-level Counter-Strike to help this team mid-round against top 10 teams in the world. So when I look at Big, I think that's the thing that's going to hold them back more than individually, actually, is figuring out how to be better in these mid-round situations.
All right, Alan, last thought. What's a failure for you in the world ranking for Big? What do they need to achieve for this season to be a success? What's the number?
I'll go almost parallel with Maui. I'd say outside of top 10 is a bit of a disaster. And then probably 7th I'd go for is a good goal.
Man, too much agreement here. Too much agreement. Let's see if this
I
next
know.
topic can really change things up, really shake things up here. We need to get some chaos, some conflict here. Let's talk about NIP, the Ninjas. Ninjas in pajamas looked kind of at Pro League. Really awful on a lot of their games. So here's my question. This NIP roster, there's been ups and downs from the beginning of the year. Obviously, they got the madness of whatever the hell's going on with the Vice hanging over them at all times. But is this team cooked? Is this team cooked, or is this team going to recover? Do we think this is again, I guess the question about big, is this team a contender? Because at moments they've looked it, but holy cow, coming off the player break, they look garbage. Who wants to step to the plate first on this one? Mau, you want to do it?
Sure. I mean, I'll say what I basically saw at Pro League here, which was like basically 3 games into it, NIP completely changing their identity in terms of their opera. They switched it from Esatag to Res on either day 4. I think it was day 4 against Endpoint, which probably hurts Alan a little bit that it actually worked for them. They actually started winning once they did that. So you have to so I'll put it into perspective like this. When they started Pro League, they lost to Fnatic, Vitality, and Spirit, and they didn't win a single map. In fact, they got 14 rounds one time, but in all 5 of the other maps, they didn't even get double digits in any of the games. So that was horrible. They knew they had to change their trajectory to have any chance here at Pro League, and it actually succeeded. They actually switched the op to Res. They beat Endpoint, and then they beat Navi in a BO3. And the Navi win is where you have to think about this if you're NIP and like, do we find a little bit of redemption at the end of that?
I'm putting one qualifier. As soon as Navi won one map in that series, they had secured their seeding and couldn't change it, so it did not matter. They just had to win one map. So outside of that one map win, I don't know whether Navi were considering it, but nothing else in that series mattered. I will say that.
Well, NIP won the first map, so that was almost like a very legit win. And then the second map, and Navi did win, but actually Simple spoke to Heku in the post-game interview, and Heku said, did that influence you at all? And then like losing this game because you guys knew you already won? And Simple said he didn't even think about the fact that they had already qualified till they were down 13-7 or something like that. He said that's when he realized, oh yeah, this game doesn't matter. So he was apparently trying for I don't know if he can speak on everyone's behalf there, but if you want to bring it back a little bit to NIP here, I don't think there is a strong future for this team with using Rez as an opper. He's actually too strong of a rifler to move him to that role consistently. You have to look at Plopsky and Esatag right now as the weak links of this team, because there's not really, in my eyes, room for 2 of these guys. One of them can exist on this roster, and I would right now I would marginally lean towards Esatag based off of what I saw him do with the rifle in the last 2 series where he swapped completely off the op, and I would probably get Plopsky out of this team. Bring back, if you could bring back Knock, I mean, I think it's really strong. It's so strong for this team, but I also don't think that's going to make them like a title contender. But then they can be a true top 6, top 7 team.
All right, so Maui says cooked, but not beyond redemption. Alan, how you feeling?
I mean, it's perplexing, isn't it? Because NIP for probably the first 6 months of the year were low-key very consistent. And everyone failed to recognize it. And so I've talked about in the past is that the reason everyone was down on NIP is because they've always had an extremely obvious ceiling where placing top 4 at a big international tournament was going to take a massive overperformance from one of the players because of what we're mentioning here, the AWPing situation, maybe Plopsky's not been in good form. But actually their floor has been very consistent. They very rarely lost to teams worse than them, or at least outside of maybe the top 15 for so long. And that's why the first few games here at Pro League just confused me. They just confused me so much about NIP because I thought they actually had a good system, even if maybe the roles weren't perfect or these aren't the right players to kind of fit together. I don't understand what's happened over the player break. Do they just come in with almost no practice? So I will slightly go against it in the sense that I do think they could get back to the top 10 because it's so... I can't tell what's gone wrong here because they actually could play pretty good Counter-Strike for so much of last year. And honestly, even if it worked, I genuinely think switching an AWPer mid-tournament is a disgusting sign. I don't think it's good at all, and what that signifies and how you could ever take res off the rifle and think that's a good idea. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes at this team, but they just look like a disaster when I don't think they should be. I think they can play pretty decent Counter-Strike. So I don't know what's going to happen, Mike, but I think they definitely should be top 10.
So you think this roster, as it stands, no changes, can get back to being top 10?
Yes, I think they should be. I think that should be the expectation. I think if they just play the same CS they did 3 months ago, they would be top 10.
Do you think they can improve on what we saw 3 months ago? Do you think they can be better than that previous roster?
That's a very hard question.
I don't think they should be playing any better, because basically before with this NIP lineup, what I would almost expect is that I actually thought that team could probably beat Vitality in its previous form. It could beat G2 in its previous form. It usually would just beat most, like, basically they were one choke away from not making it to Cologne playoffs, because they were up, no joke, something like 10-1 versus Maus on Inferno map 2 after winning map 1, and they started laughing and they started like giggling and they started dying to the like Rez died to the bomb, and he just like looked at his coach and laughed, and it was like, yo, this game is not over yet. And then they just lost the whole series, and it felt like they didn't do anything. They actually, I think since that moment, they won like 5 rounds of the next 30 or something, like something abysmal versus Maus, because they just lost focus. And to their credit, they actually qualified for the Blast Fall finals. They actually, I think like this, because of how bad Pro League was, people might forget that, because the way that they got through the Blast Fall groups was just because they beat Heroic in a BO3, they beat Astralis in a BO1, and beat EG in a Series 2. And those kind of results are very, like, they don't look that impressive actually on paper at all, because they did, I think, who did they lose to? They lost to Vitality, they lost to Astralis, I think they lost to one more team. Liquid. Yeah, they lost to Liquid. And so those losses felt really bad, but like based off of the format and how Blast works, they actually made it, and so they have a chance for redemption. They definitely do, but I would be shocked if at that Blast Fall finals, or I guess the Blast Fall finals are pretty long from now. I guess I would be surprised at the major if they were able. Well, actually, what comes first? I forgot what.
I think it's got to be the major, isn't it?
I think the major.
Yeah. It goes showdown, major,
Blast Fall finals is after the major. Yeah.
Okay, so I would be shocked at the major if they made it to top 12. Yeah, I'd say top 12. I'd say top 12 would be a pretty, really impressive. So like even one BO3 away from making the playoffs. If they make it to playoffs, they would be like, how did we do this? Like we're actually gods for making this work, because we don't even have an opera. But I think they're gonna be just in the legend stage and get bounced there.
I'd say that's a pretty definite cooked from Maui. Alan still thinks there's redemption here, but we'll move on to our next topic. We'll keep things moving here. Here's our last topic. This is about the major. It's not too long off now, and specifically it's about the RMRs and how qualification works, because we're about to be really getting into the thick of that. And the question is about the priorities. People have been discussing slots, how many regions should get which slots, what the philosophy should be on it. And so there's two philosophies for how you can determine who should be at the World Championship. Do you want the 24 best teams in the world, regardless of which region they come from, or do you want representation from all of the regions of the world to show all of the different places that have Counter-Strike and have them have representation in the World Championship? That's the question before us. What do you guys think? Maui, go first.
I guess my answer is really political here, in that I almost just think of, I still kind of think the top 16 is the real part of the major, and I don't think the challenger stage that doesn't really cut it for me. Like top 24, like basically when it gets to the top 16, that should be the best top 16 teams in the world, bar none. I don't want to see just representation there, but for those extra 8 teams, that actually get stickers and everything like that, yeah, throw it around a little bit in terms of where, like for the challenger stage, which used to be the major qualifier, I'm cool with it being part of the major, because it just means that they get stickers, and then it's going to help fund the orgs that are going to be working in a region that's probably devoid of most resources, like Asia, and actually kind of now like part of like the Americas. Like both of those don't seem to be getting too much in terms of kickbacks. So if they get any little boost by just getting there via affirmative action, essentially, then I'm okay with that. Just give me the best though for the legend stage and on.
Alan, do you know what affirmative action is?
Not really.
We won't get into it, but that is an NA specific reference for all you NA viewers out there. But yeah, Alan, how do you feel about it?
So I kind of picked this topic, and the reason I picked it is because I've changed my mind on this quite heavily. And so when I was coaching Endpoint in particular, I certainly felt at the time like EU should get even more slots, even more major slots, because I think if you just look absolutely objectively, there's probably 3 or 4 teams that don't make it through the EU RMRs that would win. You know, the Asian RMR will place top 3 at the Americas. So at that time, and especially being a bit biased, I would have been absolutely in favor of EU getting whatever 20 slots maybe or something, even more, and just cutting down the others. Even maybe Asia gets 1 or something. Or you combine other regions to play together or whatever. So at that time, I was pretty hard fast on let's just rework the system so that we can have something where all the best teams just get there, maybe even have invites for a certain level. But since then, I have changed my mind a bit, and I do think just I think each maybe should have a few less slots, not drastically less, but let's hand a slot to, let's say, Africa or maybe South Africa, or let's hand 2 more slots to Asia or Oceania combined in. So I've swung the other way, Mike. I'm actually in favor of let's dock some of the EU ones and give them across the globe.
All right, here's a controversial take. So Maui, how do you feel about that? Do you think EU has too much representation within the major now?
As a purist for wanting the best games possible, I think they have a great amount of representation, and I want them to have that much. I almost though really do think that again, like I'm using the term affirmative action, but just like basically giving little boosts to orgs or to regions that are just going to have less in terms of resources. It's obvious that if a team comes from South Africa right now, they're going to get bodied. There's pretty much no hope that even the best 5 people in that entire country across all teams, like even if you took JT back from Complexity, that they would put together a team that can do anything other than last place. But I also think that it's so important to put these seeds and nurture them in terms of just giving them a slot, giving all these players in a region something to aspire to, giving matchmaking servers from Valve so that they can actually get a scene going, so people will actually play there, and hopefully it's not just infested with cheaters and people that abuse the prime matchmaking system, however that's done. Like that kind of stuff goes such a long way so quickly. I feel like the most obvious case of that is just like what Japan is getting from Apex Legends and from Valorant, how they're getting such a crazy big scene now because they have so much representation at international events. And actually they came and surprised a lot of people. And I think that really could happen in CSGO if there was something to be reaching for. But now there's really like nothing. You have to, if you're in the whole continent of Africa, you have to leave that continent if you want to be a pro CSGO player, which is kind of, actually, that is ridiculous. That feels like you're missing over 1 billion people, like billions of people that are literally just stranded on a continent that don't even really know Counter-Strike is a thing.
I mean, they don't even get a qualifier slot for one of the others, which I know would, strictly speaking, not make total sense, but they should definitely get 1 slot at like one of the EU RMRs.
I mean, even
what's the alternative?
If you look at Asia, there are 4 RMR slots for all of Asia. And also, again, you speak about like, needing to leave your needing to travel from, Korea or Japan to actually be able to have the ping to compete in the Asian RMR, which I think is more located in Southeast Asia in terms of the servers in Singapore. It's brutal. It is tough to do anything as a region. You're just so isolated, and there's really nothing else, right? Like maybe you get some opportunities at a challenger event, right? Those have some Asian teams come through. Conference has some Asian teams come through the leagues. But outside of that, you're not getting anything for a Blast. You're not getting anything for, any of these Elizas or any of that unless you go to Europe. Unless you travel physically to another continent, you don't even have a chance to compete at these events to get that representation. There is nothing there. I think if you take those major slots away, if you take any opportunity to get into the World Championship, it's done. And I think your point, Maui, about what Valve's done, what Apex has done in terms of growing scenes in regions where, for years we in CS just said they don't have attack FPS scene. They just don't. They won't. They like Overwatch. They like League of Legends. They're not going to play our game. Turns out that's complete bullshit. Turns out people like games, and talented gamers are good at multiple games if they dedicate themselves to them. They just had no opportunity. So I'm firmly in favor of the World Championship. The major should represent the world as best that we can, at least as 1 or 2 events a year where we actually do reach out to the globe and see what's out there.
Yeah, what I'd actually like is some system as a hybrid where it's something like top 12 in the world get invited, and then we have a very open qualification system, because as much as I do want a lot of representation, what I want, and it's kind of in the same vein as Maui, is like when we get to the major playoffs, I don't want a team missing, because we've kind of fudged the system a bit. But beyond that, there's a bit more play. So I'd actually like some sort of unified ranking, and then invites to come out. Maybe they do or don't play RMRs, these top 12, and then a very open field thereafter.
What if we expand the challenger stage? What if we don't leave the top 16, we don't touch that, but we expand the challenger stage to, instead of being 16 teams, being 32, being, a larger number.
If it were just 4 more or something, I don't know how you can make a Swiss system the right number, but whatever the minimum addition it would be, I would be a fan of that, as it would include just 1 Africa team, and then maybe some other, I don't know what the underrepresented regions are right now, but maybe like actually Middle East goes through the APAC
they
qualifier.
do, but it's very hard. Like Pakistan now apparently has to compete in Asia instead of the Middle East, and it's very weird. So maybe you give 1 to the Middle East region, because we've seen players emerge from there recently quite a bit.
Right. Well then actually, if let's just say it's 4, I would actually just do 2 more Europe, and then I would do 1 more Americas, and then 1 more Asia. Well, actually, I kind of wanted the Africa one to be part of Asia. I guess. Okay. So I don't know. I want an Africa slot though. I think it's really important to just have that one, because that's going to capture billions of people.
What if we had a system where we had maybe stickers or a different rev share for the RMRs, and we make the RMRs bigger? Because there is a point in the major where we just keep adding teams, it's going to get a bit ridiculous. So why not make the RMRs for these lesser regions just have more teams, even if the slots don't go up, and then we maybe have not full wax stickers, but something in the game for them? I mean, it's licensed to print money for Valve, so why not?
Yeah, honestly, it should just be like graffitis or something, spray paint, like
team skins. It's only a matter of time.
Team skins. I don't know if that'll ever happen now, just because it would be so. It's like I feel like you should just give that to like the championship team or top 2 teams at the major. But if it were, I mean, anything, really any in-game item, like I would just go with graffitis, because they just aren't worth as much as stickers ever. They're never gonna be. So, but it gives something to them at least.
Well, we'll have to see. This has been perhaps the most collaborative episode. I know it's only episode,
we're going against the whole
but you guys agreed each other way too much. So I guess we'll just cut it off there before we all start hugging and singing Kumbaya. This episode of Caught in the Crossfire has been very friendly in that regard. If you, for some reason, are watching this show and you don't follow Mauisnake, you're probably doing things backwards, but go ahead and give him a follow on Twitter. Follow him on YouTube as well, because he does a lot of content, a lot of podcasts. If you enjoy this podcast, you will probably enjoy a good chunk of Maui's output. Follow Insight on Esports as well, which is where Snake and Banters goes, right? Or is it Insight on CS? Yep. Do you have a separate
Insight Esports CSGO.
Okay. Yeah. Follow that for Snake and Banter. Watch Pro League for more Maui action. Anything else you want to plug before we wrap things up?
Honestly, just gonna plug you guys. Keep it up, fellas. Let's keep it going. Keep it rolling.
We'll keep it rolling.
Keep it rolling.
Next time you come here, we're gonna have a few more arguments. We'll figure that one out. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you on the next Caught in the Crossfire.